And I can't help but laugh because it's like automatic.
Nothing even has to happen.
No, nothing has to happen. We just start laughing.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome back to Honestea Talks. I'm Ranjita Singh.
And I am Ashley Peña.
How are you today?
Amazing. How are you?
Also wonderful. Okay, so for the guest today, no, I should rephrase that. For the viewing pleasure today, no. See, this is how bad I am at this stuff. We have a guest today. It's a person that I know that I met through personal training. And it was interesting because when I met her, there were so many similarities when we first began talking in regards to like what she wanted to do moving forward in her life and in her career. So we have Miss Jackie, and her title is Associate Marriage and Family Therapist, Associate Professional Clinical Counselor, and School Counselor. And I'm going to bring her on and let her discuss her expertise because clearly we all know I jumble words. So here is Miss Jackie.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here.
Yes.
Yay.
Thank you for reaching out and wanting to be a guest. That's what we love. We like to have people interact and reach out and see. We're a whole world of unique individuals and we all have different things to bring to the table. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, since I'm kind of really horrible at doing that stuff. And a little more in-depth introduction of yourself as to what your expertise is.
Sure. So my name's Jackie Alvarado. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist and associate professional clinical counselor. The title of associate basically just means I'm in between graduate school and licensure. So working towards hours to become licensed. I'm also a school counselor. And with all of that, my expertise primarily is working with adolescents ages 11 to 18, mostly in the high school aged area. Fortunately, in most of the Bay Area, our high schools actually have wellness centers on them, meaning that the students can access therapists at any point during the school day, during the school year. So we don't work over breaks and summers and things like that. But I absolutely love it because I believe that part of mental health care starts with preventative care. So if we could be teaching our kiddos as young as, I think we could work in preschools actually, which would be amazing, how to take care of themselves during times of trouble and strife and just living life. Life's hard. So, and when we start to see things like depression symptoms, anxiety symptoms, that they know what to do, not only medically, but also for themselves emotionally. So I've been working with kids now for about 20 years, I would say, in and out of the mental health field and different things like summer camps and fun arenas too. So I feel like I have a natural way of communicating with kids and their families. I do a lot of family work too. So yeah, that's pretty much my expertise.
Yes. Awesome.
I actually have something to say. I love that you mentioned preventative care. I think that's so important. And it's something that's not talked about so much. A lot of what I've seen within my own experience, within my family, within my close friend group, excuse me, is that they reach out for help when they're in a place of needing intervention, right?
Right.
And even when I embarked on this journey and started really tending to myself, I did that mainly so that I can break cycles, so that I can essentially help other people prevent even getting to the place where they needed intervention, which there's nothing wrong with, but it's an important, it's really, really important. So I love that you're doing that. We need so much more of that. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say something very similar in the fact that how, in your professional opinion, if we were to be able to reach kids at a younger age in regards to like how to cope with emotions or teaching emotional intelligence, how much less likely are we to see them on medication further down the road?
Right.
Like, I mean, having been in medicine, that's where my mind almost always goes, because there's we're really quick to write prescriptions, but we're really bad at teaching the coping mechanisms or the emotional, how to traverse through emotions.
Right. And then maybe being able to combat addiction, right? Like we have a huge society addicted to what was a prescribed medication, an opiate. So, and then now turning to things like heroin and fentanyl because it's cheaper and their habit is so large. So that's a huge issue that we're seeing all across the United States. I know that we're in different states and it's impacting everybody. So,
yeah. And I think something important too is like we spoke before we started this live about like access. And, you know, when I was younger, I didn't have access to a therapist. I never worked with a therapist. I never had a coach. I never had a mentor. Right. And had I had that, my life would have changed completely. And I'm glad that things turned out the way that they did, because obviously I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be who I am. But it really would have changed my entire life, all the habits that I had, all the things that I did as a young adult, because I did not know how to cope with what I was going through and the needs that I had. And so it's something that you mentioned that I think is important too, is that you're really never like too young to have that support. I've worked with preschoolers. I was a mental health engagement specialist, and I worked with little kids. And a part of me would think like, you know, there's so little, you know, what really do they need? But it made a huge impact. And I think that is really important. The fact that like, if you can have access to it at a very young age, it really changes the entire course of your life.
Completely.
Or just even having some sort of positive role model that's not a parent, because parents, I mean, that's a different relationship with the child, right? Like we have to take certain cues and be told what to do in certain regard by our parents. So it's a different level of authority, I guess you could say. Whereas like having someone that's a therapist or a coach that's more of like a mentor even, it's a safe space for them to just literally just speak out whatever they're feeling or going through without judgment or without feeling like they're going to get in trouble.
It feels too that it's a systemic change, right? So access, I primarily work in very high affluent districts because parents raise money and that's what they can put back towards the school systems. And, you know, I don't see that everywhere in every single school district. If they don't have enough funding for books, they're really not going to have enough funding for something like mental health care. And it's also a historical change. We grew up, I don't know about you all, but I grew up in sort of like the children are seen and not heard.
For sure.
When you talked about parents being in a different hierarchical aspect, it's true. I have to remind my kids all the time, this is your space. Whatever you say in here, it stays with me, minus a few things, right? But you get to do whatever you want to do in here. I had a student last week tell me, I didn't like that activity you did after we did it. And I was like, okay, that's great. I'm probably going to do more stuff in here you don't like. And you get to say that. Because they don't get to say it anywhere else, you know? So that's also a piece, I think, of what has to change. Parents also have to become a little bit more open to have, we call them courageous conversations with their kiddos.
I love that.
I like that too. And it's also, I think, aside from just the age thing, it's also a cultural thing. Like
totally.
I definitely, growing up in my household, I knew what a psychiatrist was. I knew what therapy was, but like, heaven forbid you say that to your parent because you don't want to be their therapist. I mean, I grew up being my mom's therapist for a lot of things. And then I just the other day finally told her, like, look, the reason I always wanted to leave or not be in this house was because I didn't know whose emotions I was holding on to. Like, it was dad's or yours or mine? Like, I didn't know. And finally, when I left for 10 years and finally came back, I'm now in a place where I know what my emotions are and what aren't. So I don't absorb it like I did before. But I finally now at 38 was able to tell her that, you know?
That's a good, strong boundary too.
Definitely.
But imagine like growing up, no one taught me that. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's why these conversations are so powerful, right? Like, because we're still, like you said, we're still working on changing a lot.
Right.
And if these conversations aren't had, then we're continuing the stigma. But it's so essential that we talk about these things, even if it's something that did happen 20 years ago. Like, having those courageous conversations, like you said, are so important with family members, with friends, and even just us having this conversation is so important, because it's something that is still challenging for a lot of people to talk about. I've seen so many people not talk about mental health until they had to talk about mental health.
Right, till they're in crisis.
Yeah.
And then they're in a different system too. So we try to tell parents, you know, once I have to do a 5150, which is a suicidal call to a law enforcement agency, unfortunately, then the law enforcement agency becomes the person of contact. You've now lost me. I can advocate as much as I can, but once they leave our grounds, they're with that agency, and then they're with the hospital. So it's also education. So I do a lot of psychoeducation with my kids and their parents of these are the systems in place. And sadly, if we access them, it could be a bad access too.
Yeah.
Not be, and especially if you're a person of color.
Yeah.
You may have a different access than a person that identifies as white or appears white, right? So
I mean, we're seeing that rampant right now
totally,
in our
in our societies. So I try to remind folks of language that they can use and different things they can try before we get to those really big crisis moments.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's important.
Absolutely. Yes. It is important, especially when, you know, you've seen it happen so many times. Like, at least for me, it's happened so many times within my family that it's almost like an obligation or something, a responsibility rather, because you don't want that to continue being the story, right? You want to be able to remind people that they deserve to heal, that they deserve that time and attention before even getting to the place where they can no longer function, or they can no longer do it on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you, Jackie. How do you think we can go about breaking the stigma behind therapy or psychotherapy, cross-culturally, or even cross-generation?
So I think where it has to start with is just the simple word of talking. So I think a lot of folks forget that that's all you're doing in a session is just talking, and it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't leave the space unless it medically has to. But that's what I see cross-culturally too. So I grew up primarily in a Mexican home. So in my home, you did not talk about your feelings to each other or to other people outside of your home because that was embarrassing. You know, we don't talk about that stuff. And you know, the male in my house ruled the home. And so there was a lot of disconnection with emotionality because he was trained that vulnerability was weak. So you didn't express how you felt. So it's almost like we have to work on that weakness, that it's not weak to be vulnerable. It's actually very courageous and very hard, and it's an emotional risk. But the benefits of it, if it wasn't such a secret and it wasn't such a stigma, then I think people could see the benefits too. You know, we also don't showcase in our societies how we're benefited by things like talk therapy. We're shown FDA approved medication.
Yeah.
And instant gratification, right? If I take this Zoloft, I get to get up today and feel great like the lady in the commercial. So what if we were to show things like a talk therapy session on a commercial instead? Or combat it. I don't disagree with medication. I always think it's sort of like it opens the window to be able to access a skill set, right? Like if I'm so depressed, I can't hear you telling me what I need to do physically or behaviorally or mentally. But it shouldn't be the end all be all where now we have people abusing it, you know?
I agree. I had a client in the past say, and I still use it to this day, it's a tool in the toolbox.
Yes.
Medication is a tool in the toolbox to get to the point where eventually, like you said, it's not the end all be all. there's a way to be able to be successful without it.
Right. Sort of clears the fog away
Yeah.
to access, things like changing your cognition or we talked a little bit about healing shame, right? Like that's a huge, huge problem in our society. It's the underlying thing to everything from addiction to eating disorders to depression and anxiety. The way that we treat people is just not okay. And we don't talk about that.
Absolutely.
So that's where we've got to get to, is just being able to say, this is not okay and I have to work on it. And also trauma, that's huge. And we're all now, this is the best time for us to bring it forward because everyone is experiencing community trauma right now.
Yeah.
We can't deny it, right? It's worldwide. So this is now when we can say, okay, look at what trauma does. We didn't really see it in the 2008 recession. We're seeing it now because we have mass amounts of addiction and things occurring from the inability to recover from that. It's going to show up again. So I'm hoping there will be leading experts out there researching these things and what trauma does to us, and that it exists in our homes currently. Everyone experiences trauma. And it's not a dirty word or a bad word or something you can't move through. And also back to sort of the pill theory of instant gratification, mental health is something you work on the rest of your life. And I think that scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's facing yourself, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
No one else is in your mind but you.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a lot of responsibility for yourself in wanting to heal that, heal the parts that are hurt in that.
Right.
Or even be vulnerable, like you said, to open up to someone to share what is going on in there, to help traverse it and get through it to the other side. Because there is always the other side of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
My friend sent me a picture the other day of a bird. It's a parrot, like a character parrot, like a drawn one. So it says like the process of therapy, the parrot's like all groomed and pretty. And it's like the before and then the after. His feathers are like super ruffled and crazy. And then below it is the ruffled one as the before and the groomed one as the after. Because change is hard and it's a process and it doesn't always feel good. A lot of times things get much worse before they get better.
Oh yeah.
And also too, a lot of clients have the predisposition where I feel great, I'm going to leave therapy now. Well, that cycle's going to come back down again. So are you sure? Or I'll see you in a month because I pretty much kind of know your patterns of behavior. So, and I have a really good friend that works in couples therapy and man, she's booked. I don't even think she's had an opening in like over a year. Because of the amount of relationship strife we're seeing and the pandemic too. A lot of that forward. But even prior to that, I don't know if we know how to couple in this world anymore with another person, whether romantic or not. So how do we build sort of mental health systems in our homes too, to help each other?
It all, in my own opinion, this is just my opinion, but it all comes down to the self. Like, if you're in a certain space, you can't assume that the person you're with is in that same headspace. They're their own individual with their own mind. Like just as we're all sitting here, there's stuff going on in my head, but I don't know what's going on in Jackie's head. I don't know what's going on in Ashley's head. Like you guys are saying yes and shaking, but like there's other things going on in here, right? And when we're in a partnership, that's exactly what's happening. There's like this person with their own mind and you with your own mind. And unless each individual's minds are in a healthy space, then there's definitely going to be butting of heads. And it's a matter of learning how to be empathetic and compassionate with the partner in regards to what they're going through and vice versa. And that, like I said, that's just my opinion. I'm not even in a relationship, but I'm hoping that I can be that person when I'm in one.
And I think too, something that's really important, which ties into kind of what we keep saying, it's like a reoccurring theme, is having the tools before even maybe getting into a relationship.
Yes,
right.
Right. Like I found so much value in learning before ever even getting to the point where I'm applying that information, where I'm in a space where I need to apply it. I'm not in a relationship, and I don't know when I will embark on that journey.
Yeah.
But I still want to have the tools so that when I do, right,
Exactly.
I'll have better communications, because I'll have so much in my toolbox, right, that
Yeah.
I can use and apply, versus getting into a relationship and then getting to the place where I'm like, okay, well, we need this help, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine and powerful and
Yep.
necessary. But just like what you said, even when you are feeling good, I think something that's really important when it comes to mental health is understanding that even when you are doing well, you really still can gain so much and have there's so much value still on continuing to work with a therapist, on continuing to work with people that are helping you with your mental health, because it isn't something that you just do when things are going wrong. It's something that you do because it helps you feel good, it helps you heal, it helps you thrive and continue to thrive. And I think that is something that is shifting, that I have seen and hopefully continues to shift and get better, is the fact that, like, this is also important for preventative care and to continue doing for a lifetime, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And to
Not just to
maintain.
heal. Sorry, go ahead.
And to maintain, right? Like I'll tell my clients, like when you have a car, you want to keep maintenance on it if you want it to go 150 to 200,000 miles. So we do things like changing the oil or rotating the tires before our tire pops, before we run out of oil, right? And that is a very accessy kind of metaphor, right? Like if I can't afford a car, that wouldn't apply to me. So I'm trying to figure out another one that will be better. But it's not that anything is wrong. The car is probably running fine. It's getting you from point A to point B. But we know that eventually if we keep running it, something's going to happen to it.
Yeah.
And so if we know that we're predisposed to be anxious, then we go and we see someone. And I think what people forget is you don't have to talk to somebody once a week. It can be every 2 weeks. It could be monthly. It could be bi-monthly. It could be every 6 months.
Yeah.
You can keep that relationship going. The door never, ever closes with your therapist unless you have a different disorder that they don't specialize in and they recommend that you see somebody else. But even that, I have friends that they might maintain the talk therapy and their client is seeing an addictions expert, so they call it marriage and family therapy because what we work in is relationships. And like you were saying, Ronnie, your relationship to yourself is what we really can only work on. We can't decide how anybody behaves in our presence, but we can decide how we respond to it. And you also said something that kind of made me think, I don't really know any American that lives in the present day. We are a fast-paced technological society that is constantly moving 20,000 miles a minute or more. And that's how we deem ourselves as the greatest country on earth, right? So that's part of what we see every single day in media, social media, everywhere. So our brain is constantly moving because that's what we've been taught.
Yeah.
And so how do you then focus in on an emotion that makes you feel crappy and might make you stop moving forward? You ignore it or you take a pill for it. So we have to teach people how to slow down. Yeah. Even myself, I have to really work on that as a clinician. So
it is. It's every single individual on this planet at some point or another has to work on being present. And it's a lot of, like you just said, the reason that there is so much anxiety in this world, because it's what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And tomorrow's not promised. Right. And so what can you do today? What can you do right now? Like Ashley and I just had, was it last week that our topic was death, I think?
The week before.
Or the week before. Yeah. And so it's like 3 hours from now, I don't know what's going to happen. Right now I'm on the show with you guys, so I need to be here right now with you guys.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I don't know what can happen 3 hours from now.
Right.
So it literally, it does come down to that, but it's a work in progress, right? Like you can't just automatically be like, oh, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
No, it's a muscle.
It's hard.
It is. It's a muscle. Like you said, you have to train it.
Yeah.
You have to try to work on it every day. Once you become cognizant of it, I think that's when you can and have that awareness that you can start working on it as on a daily basis. But if you don't have that awareness of it, like that's where it's hard to rein in those thoughts and
definitely
right
and be in a calm state of mind. Going back to the pandemic, because I know one of the things that you said you're focusing on is coming out of it and what's happening now. What are you seeing in these adolescents and these kids that you work with now that we're slowly shifting out of this pandemic?
The reason I think it was on my mind so clearly when I reached out to you was because which, by the way, I just wrote her an Instagram message. I was like, how could I be on your show? Like, what process? She was like, just like that. It's that simple. It was great. Unfortunately, I'm seeing our suicide rate start to increase very suddenly. And that scares me a lot. And to the point where not only because it's occurring and I'm seeing just the complete lack of can I do it? Like, can I do it when I come out of this pandemic? Can I go back to school? Will I have the same friends? What is this going to be like? But also, we cannot care for children the same way that we were when we were in person. So then we worry about like a contagion occurring. So other students copycatting the same thing that student did. And I can't get to them because they're on a computer all day. So that there's a large fear in that for the professionals that work with adolescents, even teachers too. I'm hearing from them. Stamina is going to be an issue when we return to school. Kiddos are used to a half day, getting work done at a self-paced sort of, and that value system is so great. I actually love it. I think we've seen a lot of students thrive in this kind of self-paced type of education. But because of the way our society moves, it's like, let's just jump back into the way that it was before. Well, I don't know that the way it was before was working. And schools, now the education system is being highlighted as how broken it is. So that's going to be an issue when we return. So much depression, and teenagers deal with depression and anxiety pretty frequently. I mean, when I work in middle schools, it's like days of our lives. It's just like every day is something, right? Because they're trying to be relational. They're trying to have self-identity, and it's so normal for their development. But this level of depression is so symptomatic. They're showing every single sign on a consistent basis of depression. And I wonder how many of our kids are going to need to be medicated to pull through it. And that depression level is very high for someone who is 14, 15, 16 years old. And what we experience in childhood is usually what we carry through adulthood. So I worry that if we don't deal with this now, what is their young adulthood and through their life going to be like for them? Fear too. So that's a large one. Sorry, Ronnie, go ahead.
Well, talking about what the kids are experiencing, what it brings to my mind as well is how many of these parents that didn't have this kind of knowledge and therapy themselves and are also struggling with it. So it's like if the parents are dealing with depression, anxiety, stress for a household, keeping a roof over their heads, especially through everything that we're going through now. Like if a parent is going through this stuff, I can't imagine the stress a child is feeling, knowing and seeing that their parents going through this. I don't want to be a burden on them by, saying what I feel and what I, what I mean? So it's such a cycle that we have as a society. We've created this. And so it is, it's a systemic thing, like you said, that we have to try and break. And it's just, how can we do it? Like what things on this level can we start doing to help either educating parents and kids that it's okay? And like, how do you make someone I don't want to say it in that way, but to see the light? Like, how can we shine a light on something that allows both to reach out and seek the help that they need? So,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
if that
A lot
feels
goes through the
large,
mind
right?
when you hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we can try to do as much as we can in our own communities, bringing people together, hopefully. I mean, again, money is an issue, right? Like a lot of these communities are dead from businesses not being open for the last year and people losing their jobs and just trying to stand on 2 feet and accessing systems, such as unemployment and all of that is still a large issue that's going to continue. And if you didn't deal with issues prior, all of this trauma just brought it all back up.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we can see more family therapy or more adults accessing therapy. And I question as a clinician when, because I would have done it now, right? Like I would have done it through the pandemic. I don't know a lot of my fellow colleagues that saw a large increase in their caseload through the pandemic because people were just trying to make it every day. And so having an outside entity like a mental health component is just too much. So I wonder, I mean, we need to be in more community mental health arenas such as schools so we can work with kids. But it's kind of a goods for money kind of thing that's also going to happen for us too. I can't afford to be working for free, and that's kind of the expectation. So that also needs to change on the clinician side of things. So it's just a hard cycle that I think we're in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think that that's the challenge, right? Is that I feel like if it were set up for everyone to thrive, right, and to then we wouldn't even be at the place where there's such a struggle getting back to things, right? It's because of the fact that a lot of people don't have access, or like you said, a lot of people can't afford to just give their time and energy to the people that need it, right? And to the kids that need it, to the adults that need it. And I think that that is really why we see so many of these things as issues constantly, generationally, right? It's because though there are people that are here like yourself that are making an impact, that are making a huge difference, it's still, there's so much that's not in your hands that needs to change in order for our community collectively to be served in a much greater way. And I think that no matter how many more therapists we have, no matter how much support we have, there's only so much that you guys can do because of the systems that are put into play, which is what makes it all so challenging and sad, because there's so many. I mean, I've seen it being the kid and not even experiencing a global pandemic, right, as a child. So I can't even imagine what these kids are going through, on top of what they're already facing, on top of, like you said, the traumas that they've already dealt with. Now they're dealing with this traumatic experience, and with the same systems that are not necessarily there serving their highest good. It's a lot.
Yeah. Jackie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So being that you do this work, what have you done for yourself during the pandemic to help your own mental health?
It was a struggle at first because I dealt with my own fears around catching it, and I live with my folks too. So also about bringing it home to two older people. If I called them elderly, they would kill me. But close to their 70s, right? So lots of fear around that. I mean, at one point I told my dad he could never go back to work, so, and now they're vaccinated, so it's all good. But, one of the things that I keep going back to in my mind a lot is I rented an office space. I needed to move out of my home to work to keep confidentiality and have all of my things and so on. And I have a couple colleagues that are still coming in and seeing very few clients or working primarily on the computer. And I met one day and I said, I feel like all I want to do is help everybody. All of these kids need somebody. And that was in the muck of it, right? Like we have no idea when we're going to come out of this. We don't even know what a vaccine is at that point. And so it feels like it's going to go on forever. And she said, but you can't help everybody. That's irrational for you to think that your emotional state could take that. She said, right now I have 3 clients and that's what I know that I can do. And so she just made me realize that boundaries were going to be very important during this time. And I've had to use them a lot, which is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And I tried to look at things that made me happy when I was young that didn't require a lot of technology or even material things. So walking outside or doing sidewalk chalk with my nephew. I tried to find joy. So what could bring me like easy, accessible joy? That's so like, I can't think like base, right?
Yeah.
Like when we're little, the little things that we learn.
Yes.
So I just like hang out with my 3-year-old nephew a lot and I like watch what he does. Because he thinks,
we
he
can learn
thinks-
so much from kids.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he was like, you guys are all home right now? This is fantastic. Like he doesn't even know that he was in a pandemic, you know?
Yeah.
So just also like revisiting some past maybe friendships that I had kind of let go to the wayside because of time and graduate school. And then, you know, seeking you out, Ronnie, because I knew I needed to move my body and I knew I needed to do it with somebody else. So that was, you know, really great for me. And it just kept me on that path to doing that. I actually made some new friends during the pandemic too, just by like reaching out. And so, yeah,
That's so great.
I think self-care is this big word that we use and it feels so like not tangible, but it could be small, doing guided breathing or, and I transfer that to my clients. So I do a lot of somatic body work and guided breathing work with my clients too. And just leaning into the discomfort of not being able to leave my home or make plans or travel was really hard, but I think it taught me a lot too. So now that we're coming out of it, I can say that. I couldn't say that 6 months ago, but
So what did you learn about yourself? Because you said it taught you a lot too. So now that's lead into that question.
I can be okay if I don't plan my life out to the minute because
I love that one.
Because I definitely am a type A person that I need something planned. Plus, I deal with anxiety on a pretty daily basis. So looking ahead and having something planned was always a way to quell the anxiety too. I think I leaned into boundaries a lot more because I had to have my own sanity. So that feels a little less uncomfortable. I will not say that I'm not fully comfortable with that action, but I know that it's needed and I don't need to explain myself to people. So those two things I think are the biggest ones that I took away.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's huge. I think you said something that was so important. Self-care can be so intimidating. I feel like a lot of times when you know, especially with social media, there's just so many different things that you can do when it comes to self-care that sometimes when you hear about all of them and you see all of them, you end up not wanting to do any of them because it's just so much, right?
Right.
And something as simple as going outside or taking a walk or breathing, like you said, really has a profound impact on your overall well-being. And I think it's important for people to know that because, I mean, for me, I couldn't do much this year other than go out in nature. Like that's really, and, you know, continue working on myself and tending to myself. But that was huge for me. Being in nature, like being obviously having the privilege of being in nature and having, you know, the weather that allowed it really just allowed me to enjoy my life as much as possible despite everything that was going on. And I think that that's really, really powerful that you shared that.
Yeah. It, like you said, Ashley, it's a muscle.
Yeah.
I always tell folks that, and you have to find what works for you. Like I started using this gratitude journal and I hate writing in it. I don't like it. So I say it to myself. Like I tried it for like 3 weeks and I was like, this just feels like another task that I have to bring out the tools and no.
Yes.
So now when I wake up, I know the 3 prompts in the morning and the 2 prompts at night. And I say them to myself and I don't write them down. And that works for me.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But I saw it on social media and supposedly the girl I follow does it every day. I don't think that's true. But, you know, she was like, look at this nice book and all the tools. And I'm like, that's nice, but
That's so important. That
It is.
so huge.
It's and I laugh because it's such a thing right now, right?
Mhm.
Like whether it's the spiritual community, the therapy community, the mental health community, like it's all what tools can I create to make money, right?
Right.
And so a lot of times what we don't realize is I don't need the journal. I can use
Yeah.
this little
Exactly.
pad of paper, the yellow pad of
Exactly.
paper, and write 3 things I'm thankful
Yeah.
for. So it's like, it's incentive, yes. Like
Right.
it incentivized you to start doing it and you
Mhm.
found a way that worked for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So even though you didn't go back to actually using the physical journal, you're implementing the technique of it in your life.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like when you think of spiritualists or gurus and stuff where they say things are simple and the answers are always within.
Right.
What you did just that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You use the tool because something led you to that tool.
Mhm.
And then you're like, I don't need this. I can lay in my bed and do this. I have it within me. So
Right.
it is very simple, but like we said, with the society we live in likes to complicate things. So
Mhm.
we need all the things to help us be this person, but it's like, you are this person. It's in you.
Right.
It's just, we need certain things to help bring it out. And that's, I think this circles back to the self-care. Like those are self-care things, right?
Yeah.
Wanting that journal or wanting to write things of gratitude is self-care for you and
Big time.
self-growth.
Mhm.
Yeah. And everyone is so unique too. Like what I need for my needs may be completely different for you guys. Or what I enjoy even. Like I need nature. I know that about myself, right? And then I have a brother that's like, ew, I don't want to.
Right? Gross.
Like, no, it's not happening. Like, go do your nature thing. I'm gonna be in here chilling, right? So it's really important to know yourself and know what works best for you. Because if you see something and someone's saying this is guaranteed to get you results, but it doesn't align with your needs, it's not gonna be true for you at all.
Yeah.
And what's true this week could be different next week too.
Exactly.
It brings me back to that, when people say the best cardio is this or the best cardio is that. And it's like, no, the best one is the one you're going to do.
Exactly.
Like,
because it's the best for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
We work from a place of no, right? In this society. So especially with kids, we tell them no consistently. No, you're doing it wrong. No, this is the way you do it. And so then when they go to access a tool that they're unsure of, all they hear is the narration in their head, the script of no, my mom doesn't use this, or it's wrong if I do it this way.
Yeah.
And so then they choose something that does it for them, which unfortunately could be something like a substance.
Yeah.
Or the video games. Oh my gosh. I don't know what we're going to do with that. That's an addiction. I'm
it is
completely convinced. And now that they've been on
this is an addiction too. Yeah.
Yes. It's all they do. When I do intakes, like, what are your activities you do for enjoyment? It's video games, it's phone, and it's computer. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Okay. So we're going to have to strip you away from this other world that you now live in. That's not real. Yeah. So, I was telling a friend the other day, when they go back to school, we need adults in the hallways because they're not going to know how to be in reality and talk to each other anymore. So, I see them now, and we have about 25% of our population is in this stupid hybrid thing. It's so dumb. So they walk in the hallways and we have arrows on the ground, so they have to walk. It's so dumb. So they're not 6 feet apart. So it's like, who cares if they're in the same hallway together? That makes no sense to me. And I promote that they should be near each other. I understand COVID and all of the things, but it's not real for them anymore. And so, but they're awkward. They don't know how to walk near each other and carry their bodies and carry a backpack anymore. It's interesting to just sit out. I sit outside at lunch and I just watch them.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine. I can't, it's really hard for me. I mean, I see it as an addiction with the people that are older than me even, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how really intense it is to where they will put it down for a second because they know they need to, but then they can't leave it for more
they gotta
than
go
a second.
check it or
It's a very real thing that I think is something else that we aren't talking about enough.
Right.
But I can't imagine with kids that it's not monitored a lot of times by their parents. They're just using it all the time, especially with the times that we're in, that they've had to use it.
Right.
I can't imagine what it's like for them to go from that to back to reality, like a concrete, world. I can't even imagine what that's
like. Well, especially at that age, because, especially in elementary school or something, right? Like these kids, they're so used to socializing when they're at school. And then now for over a year, it's social distance.
Yes.
So then when you're now having to be forced to be put in that environment again, it's like, well, it's like short circuit, right? Like, do I social distance? Am I able to?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's that awkwardness of like, what's okay and what's not.
Right.
I love what you mentioned though, about the always hearing no. Like, we are constantly trained to think things are negative or no, or things like that. And then when we get to a certain point in life, or even in our own self journey, where we're learning positive affirmations and learning that it's okay to be happy, it's good, things can be good. And I found myself in the past year, past couple years, I would say, really questioning when I feel good. Like, is it okay that I feel good? So many people around me are like,
I know,
feel bad. And I'm like, no, like I naturally have a positive disposition. So for me to question that about myself was like, wait, it's okay to hope for the best. It's okay to be optimistic about things in life. Like,
absolutely,
I can be happy. It's okay for me to feel happy.
Yeah.
And it's a weird feeling though.
It is, because you want to align yourself with the negative mentality that we see everywhere. Every day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we see it from body image stuff that's propositioned to women to, just everything. Like, you need the brand new car because then you won't be cool. Or, I mean, I have a hard time with things like this, just my own journey around this. But about 5 years ago, when I started doing this work, I started to see the negative implications from celebrities, from the amount of money that's being posted on the internet through them, and how that's impacting our kids. And, like things like the Oscars on last night, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that that's what we televise and people are dying in the street. So our society is very backwards too. And that's developmentally what they take in. Yeah. I'm the same age as Ronnie. And so I remember a time when we didn't see all that crap.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even have a cell phone until I was like 21 years old.
Yeah.
But they're just inundated by it. I think my 3-year-old nephew knows how to use a cell phone better than I do. Like every day he's inundated by all of these negative messages. And so then all they want is what's not real.
Yeah.
And when you try to ground them in what is real, like a mental health issue, why do I need to? I'll just make $1 million and then I'll feel better. So that's also the healing is not normal either. So
exactly.
Sorry, Ashley.
No, you're fine. I think that's what's scary about it too, is that it is real to them because they see it so much, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like if you're told something constantly, it doesn't matter if someone tells you something else, because you're like, but this is the truth.
Right.
This is what I believe, because you hear it so much. And even with the kids that I worked with, there were so many kids, and this was like a few years ago, right before this, that it's like blown up even more, would tell me, I'm on social media, I have to starve myself because all of these girls that look like this, that are my age, are getting likes and I'm not, right? And they're serious. This is something that they're really struggling with. And it is what you said, it's not only the kids their age that they see posting that, get more likes than them, but they also see, they have full access to all of these celebrities living a certain way, having a certain lifestyle that really makes them feel
that we say is accessible, and it's not.
And it's not. Absolutely not. Even,
it's funny.
Even the fact that they put, like highlighted moments, or like joy all the time, or that they're happy all the time, like, then you really start believing that that's what you have to match up with.
Right.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, piggybacking on what Jackie said about us being the same age, and there was a time before we were inundated with this stuff. Like, I actually remember having the awareness of when the Kardashians first started.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, it was either the local news or maybe national news that was like talking about them. And I'm like, since when the fuck does the news start talking about celebrities? Like that never used to be a thing.
Never.
It was like you had 1 hour with what's his face, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous Guy. And that was like the 1 hour a week or Entertainment Tonight. It was like the 1 hour a week you got pop culture and celebrity news, but national and local news was literally just news. Like they did not talk about celebrities, and even like paparazzi wasn't a thing until Princess Diana. Like because she she passed away because of supposedly because of paparazzi. That's a whole other thing, but yeah, growing up, we weren't inundated with the celebrities pushing to make their money the way they make their money and like trying to sell themselves,
Right.
Absolutely. So it's totally a different generation. And I'm grateful that I am the age that I am because I got both. So I know what old school was like where we weren't inundated with that stuff, but now I'm also aware of the transition of it in order to be able to help those that don't know what it was like before. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
And I think what's important too is that you guys, since you're aware, you're also making a conscious effort to not get sucked into it, because I've seen people that are, like my parents, my grandparents, you know what I'm saying, my way older siblings that are very much fed into it, even though they did have that same experience when they grew up knowing the old school. But they're still sucked into this like new society that we live in. So because
my parents are that way.
It takes a conscious effort of like, okay, I know what it's like and I know how that served me, and I know that now I need to make a conscious effort to not buy into this, because it can be harmful to everyone.
Yes, 100%.
Especially developmentally, if like we use a lot of Erik Erikson's stages of development, and at the adolescent stage, you're learning self-identity versus what you are in relation to other people. And so if your self-identity is this outlandish celebrity, crazy amount of money. I mean, like they said, Kim Kardashian just became a billionaire and that she made $780 million over the pandemic. Those two things to me shouldn't be occurring. And we also shouldn't be like monetizing that and saying, look at this great thing. She made all this money when people were starving in the streets. Like it's stuff like that. And that's all the kids see. So if you take that in, we were able to identify. I mean, I played in the street at that. Like I didn't even really watch TV. I don't think. I think I got like a little time on Saturday mornings for like Bugs Bunny, and that was like it, And now they watch shows that I don't even watch. So it's just incredible.
Yeah, it is. And even me, like I'm 26 and my mom raised me, thankfully, very, very old school. Like I have memories only of playing outside, and video games were like, because obviously they started popping up a lot when I was getting older, but it was always like the thing you did if there was nothing else to do. Like if you can't play outside because it's raining, or you can't do something with your siblings, or, outdoors, if you can't go to the pool. And now it's like, you'd rather do that than anything else. Right. And that's something that's really difficult for me to connect to or even understand, because I'm like, I'll do if I can just go out all the time and
anything
play
else.
I'd rather do that 100% than be on my phone. But that's not their experience, because it's like the reverse for them. They lived there first almost.
Right.
Instead of like actually having that experience that we all had.
Yeah.
And you say a really good word, play. We've lost the art of play.
Oh, yeah.
Kids don't know how to play anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neither do adults.
And I know. So we know a lot more now about the neuroscience behind trauma, right? Like our right and left hemisphere, and one takes in more emotion, one takes in more analytics. So when we experience a trauma, we actually can't put words to it. We're just in the feeling. And one of the leading experts in the world, his name's Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He's incredible. He states it very minimally too. He doesn't even have to go into it a lot, that imagination is what heals.
Oh my gosh.
If we don't even have that as a little kid, I don't know how to teach an adult how to imagine. and not fantasize, right? That's different. Like
course,
one day I'd like to own a mansion, like not like that,
of course.
but like to be in that role of play.
Yeah.
Play therapists now are even seeing they have to teach the kid how to play before they can use the therapy. That's
Wow.
incredible.
Wow.
I can't even like to play with like a fake little sword and a cape. Like they don't even they can't even access that.
But how much of that goes to environment, right? Like so many parents, first of all, in our society now, like every parent has to work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And unless you're blessed enough where one parent makes enough money and one can stay home. Because I've witnessed this, and I tell Ashley this all the time. Like I look at my best friend and her kids, she's a stay-at-home mom. So she's constantly with her children, but she makes sure to take them outside to the park.
Right.
They're constantly playing outside.
For sure.
And they're so well developed. Like the she'll be 3 next month, but she's been talking full sentences since she was like 1.
Yeah.
So it's like, how much of it is, it's that trickle down effect, right? Like if parents don't have enough time because they have to be working 12 hours a day to make the money to afford the roof over the head for the children, like where there's a point where there's a disconnect.
Or absent in different ways. You know, like I have a lot of parents, unfortunately, that they want to like keep up with the Joneses. And so they're constantly, they might not work, but they're working, it's just, they're so absent in so many different ways.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that just goes back to the system too. Like it's really hard but when it comes to access, just all of it, it's really hard to even have that environment that really helps serve these kids, or an environment where, they're being monitored. I know even my little brothers, they're monitored, and it's still something that's pretty intense for them. Like getting them to disconnect from social media, even when I'm like, let's play, let's go to the pool, let's ride bike, like come on, I'm there to play. I'm there with all the energy that I have to invest in them. And they're like, no, like I'd kind of just rather play video games. And that's with their parents monitoring them, and giving them only certain times where they can use it. So imagine we're in spaces where they're not even given that.
Yeah. I love what you said about imagination though, because me and Ashley did a thing when we lived in San Diego. It was the Valentine's, right?
Yeah, it was Valentine's Day.
We literally built a fort in our living room.
I love that.
It took imagination for us to create this fort. Like, what tools can we use? Where do we stick the broom, in order for the blanket to stay up? So, and it was literally like probably one of the best days ever in my adult life.
Same.
It's so healing.
Yes.
I want to study more why it's so healing, but he writes just a little bit about it, and it just stuck out to me as so.
Who is this doctor again? I want to look this guy up.
His name is Bessel, Bessel, and then it's Van Der, Vander, Kolk, Kolk. Okay. So his number 1 book is The Body Keeps the Score. He worked in trauma pretty much most of his sort of like PhD, doing residency. So he's a medical doctor too, which is incredible. And he studied the people returning from the Vietnam War is really where he started his study. And then back then we didn't even have PTSD as a qualification, which is interesting. But medication was just given to these folks. And then he went and saw that women who had experienced sexual assault had the same symptoms as these folks that were in war. And gender wise, right, they're separate. Like, no, women are just hysterical. So he just did a lot of brain scanning, studying. It's incredible. I'm rereading it now for the 3rd time with a supervision group that I'm in. And every time I read it, it's something new.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's so powerful.
I think you'll really like it.
Yeah, it sounds like I will. Because, I mean, me and Ashley have talked about this, especially with me. I do energy work too. It's like, the body, everything starts in the etheric first, in the energy. And so eventually when it's not dealt with in that realm, because the mind is part of that energy, it will manifest itself physically.
Right.
And a lot of times
triggered and re-traumatized, and our brain sits in fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, I love these conversations.
I
I'm so
know.
I could talk to you too every single day, probably.
Oh, I know. Me too. I love
That's
it so
awesome. We know that you have to go, so
I do.
we
I have
will-
a client.
Yes,
so.
we will let you go. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I
Um,
loved it. I can't wait to see you both again.
Before
Yes,
you
we
take
can.
off, why don't you just let everyone know what your how they can reach you if they'd like any therapy?
Sure. So I have a website. It's Jackie Alvarado Counseling at it's just JackieAlvaradoCounseling.com. I'm so used to giving my email address. But that is also my email address at gmail.com. Just visit either of those and it'll give you information on ways to contact me through phone, email, all of that good stuff. Yeah.
And how about social media?
I have Jackie Alvarado AMFT on Instagram.
Okay.
I have to say I'm not super active on there yet. I need to get better because I hate social media, but I'll figure it out.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here with us
Thank you.
today. We love you.
I love you both too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, she's awesome.
That was great. That ended
That was
up
such a
being
great-
really awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well, that's it for today. Lovely
Bye,
people.
everyone.
We love
We
you.
hope you enjoyed it. Take care.
Take care.
Wait a minute. There you go.
I'm not moving. Don't let me move. Woo! We got it. All right.
We're getting so much better at it.
Yes, we are.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you soon.